Wakili here, he has a privilege of choosing where to take his kids to private school or to public school. And I agree, sometimes once we go, because the NGCDF projects are a result of public participation. And most of the time, I have, even when I go to public participation with my constituents, and I ask them, what are your education, your priorities? Everyone shouts bus, you know. And honestly, I have tried in my constituent to persuade them that let us take care of the more immediate needs of the school, including and especially the science laboratories. And then we have agreed that once we do the lab, now we can buy the bus. And I think towards the tail end of my last term, we were able to get a bus for Elbagon DB Secondary School and for Jenga Karume Secondary School and to the secondary school. But before we got there, we had to agree we must have the labs first before now we get to the bus. We had other schools like Tayari and Molo High telling me they need a bus. I told them, no, I'm not going to buy a bus until we complete your science laboratories. However, the school buses have a sense of pride it gives to the students. I don't understand, but you can feel the zeal, you know, when they get a bus and it's written to the secondary school. And I think also the big boys or the students in other big schools like to intimidate them when they go to these functions like Science Congress and the debates, and then all those ones, the kids from the big school that have a bus, they all rush their bus, and then all these others now will rush their small matatu to their boda. I think they feel slightly intimidated, and that's why I think it's the dream of every student, every high school student, to have their school have a school bus, and so it is also, it's not just for political reasons. There is a way they pride in it, as in you could see the excitement, for example, when I deliver those buses and when they use their buses to go for those functions, you know. And I think it probably even gives them confidence when they are presenting their ideas, in whether it's in those science congresses or the school debates, or I think it has a way of transforming the thinking, the mindset, in addition to also providing them an easy way of exposure. Because again, one of the reasons why you'll find the big schools, let me call them the big schools, or the schools that are very high demand, is that they have continuous ways of exposing their students. Talking, for example, about them academic trips to, whether it is to the museum or to parliament or to universities and all that. Let me surprise you. One of the things that made me get a commitment that I must go to university was when I did my, during my Form 4, I qualified I was the best in Rift Valley Province in Science Congress, and went to Moi University for the National Science Congress. And that was the very first time ever in my life I stepped in a university. And I remember the four of us are still in a hostel. We wrote, not to say that this is graffiti and I shouldn't have done that, but you all wrote in that hostel at the wall, "We will be back."
Wow. And
the four of us actually made a commitment that we made it to university. Perhaps had I not been that exposed, I will still be looking after goats and sheep in my small village of Mokinyai. So this exposure to these students actually exposes them to think beyond their villages. And I think the school buses facilitate that process, makes it a little easier to expose the students, so that their thinking, and probably those in Alliance and all the other schools that have exposure to all these places, you know, can be almost be the same.
All right, Mwalimu, because you are a principal.
Yeah, I'm lucky because I'm now on both sides of the divide. I know what happens with the schools, and also now as a policy maker. I cannot say it better than my colleague here. The schools and the kids have esteem issues.
Okay, so this, you know, he talked about this school, the money that comes from leasing these buses. Inaenda kwa mfuko ya principal?
And that is the perception from the public. Sometimes you will just find that the community requires that bus, and the principals are encouraged very much to work with the community. Sometimes you not even charge the community around you. They will only put the fuel, because they are also in charge of the school.
The stakeholders.
And they are the biggest stakeholders of the school. And most importantly, the buses are managed by the BOM, Board of Management of the school, especially in primary. The chairman of those schools will rarely release the bus if they have not committed themselves to the school. So in very rare occasions, you will find the principal or the head teacher acting on his own behalf. But before long, I really want to congratulate some of the two principals. There are schools, we always say that the school is as good as the principal. When you look at Kabianga High School, the principal who was there, Dr. Alo, I think he transformed that school very, very much. That is now why the school has been chosen by many, many students, over 158,000 students.
Yeah, 153,074.
Then Munishi was in Nanyuki High. He realized that the last time Munishi, he used to be in Kakamega High School, then was moved to Nanyuki. Now it is 148. Unfortunately, both of them have exited from the service. So we hope that we will have even the same caliber of the principals to maintain the standards in those schools. I want to say that these buses, now when they are in school, education is an equalizer. Before, the small school would not have buses. But I appreciate that the NGCDF has brought equality and equity in all these schools. We can have a two-stream school having a bus, just like a six-stream school having a bus. These buses are used for trips. They are used for excursion. They are used to take students for educational activities. And when you cannot go to your national museum, you cannot go to geothermal, you only read them, and you cannot be there because you are a small school. When you go and ask for priority list in some of the schools, and you say, can we build you for 2 extra classroom, or can we buy you a bus? They will all say, we want a bus.
All right.
Yes. So I think that is what is there.
I think I have a right of reply. First and foremost, I knew. First and foremost, I knew that was a hot potato, because eventually we got to balance the double coincidence of want needs between the school leadership on buses and the National Assembly Member of Parliament's quest to go back to Parliament. As I wind up on that issue so that we can move on to something else, first and foremost, Mheshimiwa here needs to send 2 gallons of paint to Moi University to go remove the graffiti that he wrote many years back. But most importantly, you see, the other Mheshimiwa here, a very good principle, you know, he said when Upper Hill was Upper Hill, he's now sitting in Parliament. He chose to go to Parliament instead of continuing the good work. That is on a light note. But however, honestly, a kid might never have come to Nairobi on a trip, but if they are exposed to the best science learning in their schools, they have laboratories, they have good teachers, they have access to water, good food, a good learning environment, I think without question, they will perform well in their examinations, and they have the rest of their life, of course, to come. I'm not saying esteem issues in schools are a small problem, but I can tell you, we got to balance between the political needs of succession into the next term of national members of parliament and the needs to, of course, properly prioritize NGCDF funds for the right things. I was saying this is a big engagement. It's not just members of parliament. Everybody has a role to play. And eventually, when we strike that nice balance, I am sure our education system will be doing very great. I think it's a very good education system. It has produced extremely very good people. I wanted to go to a national school myself. I scored 550 marks out of 700 in that old system. I expected to go to a national school because that time we had a district system, and I was number 2 in the district. I didn't get a national school. I went to a school called Cardinal Otunga High School, Mosocho. It was a provincial school at the time. And when I came to university here at Parklands of the Faculty of Law of the University of Nairobi to do law, in my first year, I was top of my student against all these kids from national schools. And I believe, even now, I can make fairly better arguments than some of them who are still my colleagues in practice. So it doesn't mean that when you do not go to the school of your choice, that your future is not going to be any better.